mobility is very critical, and it's important to understand that this sector is going to witness a very major disruption, and it's very important that India gets into this at the sunrise level, because most sectors we get in when they are at the sunset stage. And if we are able to get in at this stage, because huge disruption is being caused as technology moves from internal combustion to electric. And in India's case, India is slightly different from the rest of the world, because 76% of the vehicles are two-wheelers. They consume about 64% of the petrol. They give out about 30% of the city's emission. And in India's case, as we urbanize, we are going to see a lot of new urbanization taking place. The process of urbanization has ended across America, ended across Europe, nearing its completion in China. But we are at the beginning of the urbanization process, and in the next 5 decades, we'll see more urbanization than what we have seen in the last 500 years. And therefore, we need to clean up our cities. We need to provide a good livelihood to our citizens. We need to give them good quality of life. And this would require us to really push the limits of better technologies. And this would really mean moving towards electric, a world of sharing, a world of connection, and a world of zero emission world. So sharing, connected, and zero emission world will be the future in terms of mobility.
Great. I think that sounds like a very exciting vision. And taking off from what you just mentioned in terms of rapid urbanization, the Indian cities have very unique characteristics. For example, they're extremely dense compared to the cities elsewhere. And to put it mildly, we've got very limited law enforcement on many of the aspects, which makes it very challenging for many of the technologies to be rolled out, like you mentioned. To take an example, where do we put the charging stations? Should they be in the middle of the metro pillars, or should they be on the sides? The metro stations have not been designed to take care of the last mile. There's no parking places. How do you envision the rollout of mass urban mobility in a rapidly changing urban scenario that you just described in India?
So, India is very different. And, when America was being made, land, gas, water, all cheaply available. So, America had the luxury of making cities for cars and not for its people. Actually, the car companies, General Motors and Ford, bought over the railway companies and destroyed them. And therefore, American cities, look at a city like Atlanta, 99.8% of the people travel by cars. There's no cycling, there's no walking, there's no public transportation. And therefore, it's important that we don't repeat the mistakes which America has made. Their cities are highly polluting cities because they're made for cars. India must make its cities for people, not for cars. And it's important, therefore, that we design our cities in a manner. And the layout of cities and the designing and the urban form of a city is very critical. And these cities must be designed for cycling, they must be designed for walking, they must be designed for public transportation. And actually, the city must grow and evolve on the back of public transportation. And if that happens, that is the key. And along with public transportation, the last mile must be for two-wheelers, must be for cycles, must be for walking, and that is where a lot of Indian innovation will come in.
Right. And since you mentioned the word innovation, and thanks to all the efforts you had put in terms of Startup India and those large programs, what's your view of the role of startups and private sector, and startups specifically, in some of the exciting things that you just talked about?
No, startups are the ones who will do all the disruption. So you have a startup like Ampere, Ather actually, which is in Bangalore, putting up a scooter which is the smart scooter of the future. Tarun Mehta and his group. And these people will really disrupt the future. They will bring in charging, so you'll have many startups doing charging. You'll have many startups doing innovative two-wheelers. You'll have many startups doing three-wheelers. And very smart three-wheelers you'll get. And I think you are going to get a lot of swapping on three-wheelers through startups. So these startups are the ones who are going to change. And this is really the era where you will see a lot of new companies growing and evolving. Many new companies will make it big. They will be the future Teslas of the world, they'll be the future Fords of the world, and many existing companies, simply because they are not able to adapt, they are not able to change, will just go bust.
Right. So, sir, you mentioned about shared mobility and you talked about electric and so on. One of the names that comes to my mind is Smarty, who has been very rapidly scaling up and providing the last mile using shared three-wheeler electric rickshaws. How can they plug in some of the initiatives that the government of India is rolling out, such as One Nation, One Card? How can the startups plug in into this array of infrastructure that's being rolled out by the government?
So the government's intention and objective is that they're across the board. You know, people travel by metro, people travel by cars, people travel by railways, people travel by buses. There should be actually just one card, and it should enable you to travel all over India. So a lot of spade work has been done. At the back end of it has been created. A lot of work in terms of technology has been done. And I think in the next 3 to 4 months, you will have unveiling of a One Nation, One Card. And that One Nation, One Card will enable a lot of this connectivity to take place, a lot of digital payments to take place on the basis of this card. You will be able to get into buses, into metros, into railways, all on the basis of this one card, and you will be able to do a lot of your debit and credit on the retail market along with this card. And I think the future is for companies like Smarty, because this is a great group. This has done some innovative work. This has done, in fact, some phenomenal work in terms of three-wheelers, and that's where sharing is required. India has to drive the sharing and the connected world, and that will happen. That will be the biggest disruption that can happen in India, because personalized cars like the ones you have, you hardly use it for 5% of your time, 95% of it is wasted asset. So how do you maximize your asset is really the challenge. And what model which Smarty and all have put up is that even scooters, even two-wheelers, they'll all be utilized to the maximum using digital technology. So digital technology will enable me to converge with many of the people who are traveling to same areas, and we'll all be able to pool together and sharing and connected world with the world, which will take India forward.
And this sounds even more exciting than what we just heard till now. So the platform of One Nation, One Card, would that create APIs which will be given to the private sector and startups, or is it only a government platform?
No, so the intention is that there are several agencies involved in this. You will have bankers at the back which will be doing the transaction, who will issue the cards. You will have NPCI which will do interoperable transfers. Anybody can buy the card. It will have certain limits, then you can top it up from your account. You can do transaction anywhere. It'll be like any bank, and all the banks can be the issuing banks for this.
What's your advice to the startups who are looking at solving the mobility issue in the urban areas in India?
Go for the last mile. The last mile is critical, much like what Smarty is doing. You will have many startups actually which should get into similar thing on cycling, sharing of cycles, making cycle accessible for public, or organizing walking tours, or ensuring that cars are pooled together, or ensuring that we push the limits in terms of better management of our lanes and of our traffic management system. So I think many startups you'll see in India's case, because 76% of the market is two-wheelers, you'll see many startups getting into the two-wheeler systems, many startups which will find a solution to charging scooters and motorcycles. And you'll see many startups actually getting into the world of swapping for three-wheelers. And you will find many of the established oil companies getting into CNGs for public buses, and LNG for lorries which move from cities to cities. So you'll have plenty of potential in these areas.
Great. I think those are excellent advice for the startups. I think they will do great under the able leadership in this government.